Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on another Workplaces That Work conversation. My name is Dr. Lola Adeyemo, and I'm the host. I love hosting these conversations because I love to talk, but most importantly, I love to talk with really smart people who are experts in different niche. And I think this has been a fun way for me to also learn and develop when it comes to workplaces. I do employee resource group focused consulting for companies. So I partner with organizations that want to launch ERGs, relaunch, redesign their ERGs. I have workshops around employee resource group development, and some of these sessions also are very applicable to small teams. So I've led sessions around intersectionality, communication, voices around communications and influence for ERG teams as well as small staff teams. And I think having this access and this conversation with the ERG space and the workplace community also helps me recognize that there's so many nuances to some of the things that we're brought in for. And Laura and I were talking about this before we came in. It's like there's an entry point we have. And I think mine is ERGs. There's an entry point to organizational work. But what we recognize quickly as consultants is that as you begin to peel back the layers, as you diagnose, some of the value you bring is to recognize what's breaking and what's going on. And so I started having these conversations a while back with experts in different spaces um, because, again, there is a different lens that everyone brings to these. And so the topics are always varied. And today, our topic is actually what Gen Z actually needs next at work. And I think this is a very relevant, timely, important conversation as we talk through multiple generations in the workplace I just had a recent conversation around retention and hiring today, what leaders and companies, and then what employees want. And I think this is a subset of that we really hone in on a certain generation. And there is no perfect person to do this than with Laura Massetti. Hi, Laura.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. You are so
Yes,
inspiring. I love all of your work, and we always have really good back and forth. So this should be fun.
thank you. All right, Laura. Okay, I will give you a minute to tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Laura Massetti. I am the founder of a company called Real Work Ready. So my mission is to be able to help early professionals better adjust to the workplace. And we'll talk a little bit about that today as far as what some of the challenges are. But my background has always been mostly in the corporate space. I've also worked in the startup space as well. But I've always run into the same issues that it takes a lot of time, a lot of patience, and a lot of energy to learn within the first couple of years of your career. And if you're like you or me, it took a lot of years to learn some of the basics and really contribute in the workplace. And what I've noticed is that there's a huge gap between graduating high school, university, and actually starting a job, that there was skills and processes and really unspoken rules that were not being said. So I've developed a program around this called Real Work Ready, which I work with companies who are onboarding new hires to help them get better acclimated to the workplace around all expectations. So, a big part of my market that I help is the Gen Z community. And there's a lot of things around some of their challenges and why this is really special and important to help them learn and get accustomed to the workplace. Little other things about me: I'm a New Yorker. I'm actually in New York right now. And my accent, if you caught me in a couple days, you'd hear my accent, but I just got here 2 days ago and I live in the north of Italy now. So have a fun little global perspective as well. So that's
I
me.
know. Okay, so I don't know if you had mentioned to you that I also have a nonprofit called Immigrants Incorporate, and
Yes.
as part of that's sort of like a little of my own passion, personal aspect of working with ERGs and companies around how they define what their population really needs, and not seeing a lot of focus on the immigrant and first gen global workforce that we have these days. So it will be interesting to hear your perspective as being a US to Italy transplants.
I know. Yeah, we can talk about that for days. It's so interesting now doing the reverse because I joke that my family fought so hard to leave Europe to come to the US, and now I'm going back, right? And I'm experiencing probably a lot of the growing pains that they probably did, and it's, you're helping so much around these people that are entering from other countries, and it's a different world if you come from a different country. So super
Yeah.
good stuff.
Yeah, well, welcome to New York. And I'm
Thank
glad I
you.
caught you because this is definitely a time zone, more time zone friendly for you as
Yes.
well, right? So,
Yes. It's helpful.
thank you for joining me. All right, Laura, let's talk about something that you actually already mentioned briefly, because I use that phrase as well, invisible rules, invisible workplace rules. So maybe we should just dive right in.
Yeah.
What does Gen Z want? What do early career professionals want these days? And
Yeah.
how um, how do we differentiate belonging? I think belonging is a word that we use a lot right now. Belonging, but then let's make it practical. Belonging versus
Yeah.
visibility. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So let's start a little bit as far as what Gen Z is itself. So Gen Z is anyone born between about, it could be give or take, right? But 1997 to 2012. So if you think of anyone in that space, you're between like 14 to 29 years old. And they've grown up in a very different space than other generations have. And for the first time ever, we have four generations working together in the workplace, which is completely different cultures coming together. And Gen Z is the first one that's grown up in this fully digital space where they have their smartphones available to them. Everything is very quick, everything's very on demand, everything's digital, right? So, very different time than everyone else has grown up in. And of course, other generations has adapted to it, but
Right.
Gen Z, that's all they know.
Well, they know.
So, now they are entering the workplace and they have a lot of information and access that other generations haven't had before. So they have an extreme desire for transparency. So that's number one. Transparency as far as what they should have available to them, what cultures they like in the workplace and whatnot. They have a desire to belong within that. Mental health is incredibly important to them. Are just a couple to start. Feedback as well is extremely important within the workplace. How am I doing? How could I be doing better? How is my job being done well? And this is all great, but it's all very different from generations before. So it does cause some internal tensions that can happen often.
Yeah, I love that you actually set that up. I think that was going to be one of my questions. I was like, is it too basic to actually set this up first with what is Gen Z? Because I think
Yeah.
Gen Z has almost become like a term now that we forget that, okay, this is actually about when people are born, when it talks about this
Yeah.
generation. So it gives us a little understanding of we're talking about young people, but a lot of them are also in the workforce now.
Yeah, and it's really interesting time, and why I brought up the ages is if we think back to COVID, for example, which was a huge staple in our life, it was the learning period for much of this generation. So they were either in elementary school, high school, the college as well, and there are a lot of social differentiators that happened during this time. They were forced to be digitally inept. So all of the I'm sorry, not inept. We're forced to be digitally more aware and rely on digital, right? And because of that, they're now entering a workplace where there's generations before that have just different social in person and work expectations. And they're just entering this place like, no one's ever taught me to do that. So it's definitely a big growing pain for them.
Yeah. I I think I'm millennial, and I had a conversation actually with somebody else a couple of months ago who focuses on millennial in the
Mm,
workforce, and we were having these conversations about millennials being the translators in the workforce,
Mm,
because
okay.
we are sandwiched between the two. We
Yeah.
get the traditional, but we also understand the Gen Z. We kind of were in the workforce as everything was happening. We lived it.
Yeah.
So there's a
Yeah. I like that. That's a really good way to describe it, the translator generation.
translators. It's like I see both. I see the, come into the workforce, get that one job and stay there for the rest of your life. And it
Hmm.
was a lot part of the friction that millennials had was we know what we saw, what we were taught. But there's this conflict within us, and that's why you see a lot of millennials like struggling to quit and start businesses, or struggling to pivot their career, which is most times what they want to do because they did
Yeah.
something for the people above, and now it's like um I have millennials where their kids are now telling them, wait, what, why not, like,
Yeah.
why are you still there?
Exactly. Well, it's funny because like that was my experience, and I think that you have a similar piece as well as far as wanting to be independent and work for yourself. And I was living in the corporate world for so long, and I am so blessed for that experience. I learned so much for it, which is how I created this company, but also the feeling of burnout and feeling just done with the rules of the past, the way of the past, and
Right.
just really wanted to be free from that in your own way and create your own thing. So yeah, I definitely feel like a lot of millennials are hitting that point of I
Yeah.
need to do something else.
And I think the piece of it that you and I would get is also the cultural conflicts that we're having,
Mhm.
because we know what is expected of us. We kind of know what we had seen. And so it feels, what am I doing? Like rebellious.
Yeah.
Like, is this
Yeah.
right? And so the conflict is really more within ourselves, kind of like, should I be doing this? Why am I not comfortable just being here? And so it's interesting now thinking about what Gen Z, what they are feeling right now. When you think about Gen Z, early career professionals these days, what are they asking for? And is there, I guess you touched on COVID, but is there other things that you've seen shift over the last few years as
Yeah.
it gets more comfortable in the workplace?
So they're a lot more socially aware of what's happening in the world as well. They are the first generation to really be completely inclusive of different cultures, different types of people, and they expect that in the companies that they enter, which is really a beautiful thing. It's the first generation that wholeheartedly stands by that more than others, definitely in the past. So that part of needing exclusivity is critical for what they want to do. The second part, again, we mentioned is that feeling of belonging, and a real big focus on mental health. They are the most anxious generation that has existed, and there's a lot of data around that. But a lot of that drives their need for some of the things that they want and desire within the workplace. But to your point of what you just said before of millennials, we know the expectations of what work will be like. They don't have that, and it's really interesting right now because what's happening is they are entering in this time of AI, where all of the things that we took a long time to learn, the roles and jobs and projects that people gave us to learn the business, learn how to operate, learn how to be a professional, they don't have that. And they have an incredible disadvantage of this point where they're asking for feedback, they're asking for opportunity, they're asking for things that they deserve, but the opportunities just aren't there the same. So it's interesting because companies now need to rethink of how do they get this generation more up to speed so they can contribute.
Right. Well, I'm in a generation where all of the policies I'm always scouting like all these tools, this platform now where it talks about job description, work instruction. What is the thing that you read when you start a new job? You know how they give you,
Onboarding. Yeah,
yeah, onboarding
onboarding.
and job descriptions. And remember how it used to take weeks to like just get all the policies and rules, and now you can just dump it into me and it summarizes it visually and gives you like the highlights. Nobody's reading
Yeah.
pages and pages of stuff. if you can figure out what it means, it's like this HR policy platform where you literally, as a manager and an employee, you can query the company public policies and be able to
Mm-hmm.
figure out what is our policy. It's coming from the documents, but nobody is actually taking the paper document and going through it, or even the digital. People are
Right.
just able to query directly. Um, so
Well, so,
go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. No, but you bring up a good point. So we're able to get through the onboarding quicker, and onboarding at a company teaches you how to do your role. So they
Mhm.
teach you what are expected of you day to day. But there's this huge operating component which my company solves for, which is the operating things that you need to do within the workplace. How do you act in meetings? How do you engage with your team? How do you handle performance reviews? How do you handle feedback? Those are all the things that we learn through experience that are a huge part of becoming an adult, of
Yeah.
becoming a contributing, and then they just don't have that now. So,
Well, but I
anyways,
think that was going to be my next question though, because I think we are so used to how we learn work is you come in and you spend the first 90 days just learning the things that will get you to do your job well.
yeah,
But the invisible system of performance, that's what I wanted to get to. And I hopefully, you can share more details about what real work ready actually does in this space. Because I think all of the AI and being able to speed up certain part of the onboarding is helpful. But I think it also now exposes all of the unwritten rules, as a
yeah.
huge part of, so what are some of those patterns that you solve for with real work already, around performance? I'm very interested in performance, but also around behaviors for managers and evaluation.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. So I'll explain a little bit more on Real Work Ready. So what it is a program that's available online that you can go through. It's available in a 6 month is the minimum commitment that you have, which is really supposed to be in tangent with your traditional onboarding program that a company has. And within that, we focus on the real work ready performance framework, which is really all of the things that managers might not say out loud, but they evaluate when they decide who gets ahead, who gets promotions, how are you seen as an employee, which we've worked for plenty of years at this point. That it's always those unspoken things. You could contribute the best work, but how do you really show up as a professional? How do you communicate? How do you engage? How do you collaborate well with others? So what I've done is I created a framework around this that I'll talk about. So it's a 6 month course that you're able to do within your own time. But what I offer is weekly group coaching sessions along with role playing sessions. So you're manager, I'm employee. How do we interact in a certain situation? And what I've found is in a world where anything could really be looked up online through AI, that in-person training that they're not able to get because they don't have those same opportunities is able to be done in the program that I've created. So that being said, things that managers evaluate that you learn in my program. So organizational awareness. How do you understand the dynamics of the organization in terms of the structure, cross collaboration, things that really make a business run? Execution and follow through. How do you follow through on projects? Communication and clarity. How are you judgment, prioritization, ownership, reliability, and then the hardest part I think is your professional presence, which is so hard sometimes to give feedback on. And unless you've had a really good mentor or manager, no one really tells you, like, hey, Laura, the way that you spoke in that meeting, that wasn't received well, right? So my program really provides that mentoring at scale opportunity that isn't accessible in other ways.
And this is something that you do in partnership with the organization.
It could. It's a self-service option. So if you're an early professional that thinks that it's available to them, but what I found most is that businesses want their employees to go through this because they don't have the time, the capacity, the resources to teach them, but they know that this new generation has so much to give, and they just want to be able to get that sooner without all of the hand holding, mentorship, and time that it takes to get them to that place.
Okay. I love that. I think, yes, the unwritten rules, the unspoken rules, especially tying to performance, is a really important aspect of career growth in the workplace. And so, um, I'm glad to have these as a resource to share as well. But is there something you want to share about the performance reviews specifically? Did you have client experience or stories around performance reviews and how they're viewed differently in different?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think going back to like what a performance review is, and it's changed a lot over the years. A lot of times, or in the past, they were just done on an annual basis. So you had that time once a year to be able to prove that you're of value, and it's really your pitch to get your next offer, your salary increase, whatever it is. But performance reviews in that annual or even biannual sense are happening less often. Yes, they could be a formality, but really those performance reviews are happening on a daily basis. They're happening by those informal interactions. So it's really important that Gen Z's early hires are aware of how all these social must knows are perceived by their managers. So that's a big piece of it. Another thing that I feel like people don't do that they need to do better to get ready for those formal and both informal performance reviews is being able to advocate for yourself. And this isn't self-promoting, because I know a lot of people say, well, I don't want to, sound like I'm overly confident or showing off. You have to learn how to advocate for yourself and make your work visible and make your value and your contributions to the business visible. And where I've gone wrong throughout my career is like doing all these really things that were great and a lot of contributions, but I wasn't representing them well. They were happening and I move on to the next thing, and then I get to the point where my manager is evaluating me and they're like, "Well, what did you do?" And I'm like, "Well, I did that project and it increased revenue by X%, but I never really tracked it from beginning to end." So I think that's a big thing that we all need to do, but it's more of those day-to-day moments that are the performance reviews that happen
Yeah,
throughout your day.
I know, and that a year is such a long time. Like, do you know how many projects you're all doing? Like weekly,
I know.
monthly, and then before you finish one project, you're moving on to the next one, and so it's also where the systems that are in place to track this performance regularly is very important. Because
Yeah,
if you ask me 1 year to summarize everything I did in the year, I'm going to miss some things because there's been
exactly.
so much transition around it.
Yeah, and it's like you never really know how much success you had until you look back on the whole thing in a whole, right? And
Yeah,
like within a 3 month span, you can say, okay, I worked on these projects, but they they weren't super valuable, right? But then they accumulate over time, and you're like, I made that program and I got all these new customers, and you're like, I should tell people
I
about
should put myself in
that.
the yeah, yeah, I did a great job. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and I love that, you are creating a structure, practice for people to learn how to do that.
Yeah,
Because yes, there's, a lot of us are doing the work at the organizational level. There is a lot of work that leaders and companies have to do to normalize the space and make people feel safe enough to do these. But as individuals, we also need to like not feel guilty about advocating for yourself or sharing your wins, celebrating, claiming your wins.
yes.
Because I think even as an external person, they're still needing to grow up to that, right? You do all this work with one client and multiple clients, and you forget that,
Yeah.
wow, okay, I get to claim this as a success for myself and wins too. You go from one to the other so easily that you forget to track your win and client success stories.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think that with Gen Z, they're a lot more aware that they're deserving of things as well, and that they should advocate for themselves much better than we thought years
right,
ago. So that
right,
part is great. The part where I believe there's an opportunity to learn is like how to represent that well within a performance review and to your manager. And I think that visibility and really great communication with your manager in a way, and we talk about this a lot in my course, is what's the best cadence to do that? What's the best forum to do that? So it's received well by other generations, because it's not just what Gen Z needs. It's how does Gen Z as the employee interact with the
important.
culture that they're stepping into?
Right, right. And for anyone that's listening, if you have specific questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat. I am monitoring the chat. Okay, so what does Gen Z need next at work? For leaders that
Yeah.
are listening, for organizations that are listening, um, understanding the differences, but also communicating clearly. Are there things that you are seeing that this next generation is really clearly articulating and wanting more of that? Maybe it's different from what it was 10 years ago when we had a
Yeah.
workforce that didn't have Gen Z in it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that ERG programs and businesses have done a really good job of creating a sense of belonging for early professionals, especially around mental health and things that matter to them. What I think they need to do better of once they associate with an organization, what's their career path for development? Because a lot of them are scared with AI taking those jobs that at the beginning they would have a lot of time to learn and grow and prove themselves. They don't have that. So I think that organizations have a responsibility to help provide what is the new version of climbing up the ladder for them now, because it looks different. The lower level work that we would have done to really prove ourselves isn't there. So companies need to restart to think through what is their acceleration path look like in the organization?
Yeah. Yeah. And it will look different. The whole career path, mapping on the growth path. You
Mhm.
know, Fortunately, maybe companies are all still trying to figure it out themselves.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
all the
definitely.
reshuffle and restructure and everything going on now. It's because, of course, there is role eliminations happening. There is movement happening. It's because the workplace of today is going to look different than what it looks like now in a few
Yeah,
years. Um,
yeah.
so there is jobs that will be lost, but there's also new roles that will be created because there will be new ways of doing things.
Yeah, you're right. There is. And I think the part that I feel most empathetic for the Gen Z community is that they've never even got the opportunity to experience what work is like yet. If your role is replaced and you have been in the workforce for enough years, you can adapt to other things, I think. But I feel like without even have a starting point, a first job, an internship, like someone really showing you the ropes, it's hard. And it's especially hard for first generation Gen Zs as well, who didn't have parents at home to share their work experience with, and a client meet, I mean, any of those sort of like white collar, even blue collar jobs to share their experience. They're walking in completely blind into these work environments,
Yeah. Yeah.
after, mind you, going to university or high school, whatever they chose to do, with all of this debt, with all of this learning, and they were told that you're going to walk in and be able to contribute to the world, and it just looks a lot different now. And
Yeah.
I think we all have a responsibility to figure it out.
I know. Yeah, we are in a transitional phase, and it's just a tough time for people. I was at an event yesterday where somebody who works with students and career development was asking me, well,
Mm.
we're being told that resumes are going to be replaced. what are we supposed to teach these kids now about the workplace? And so they're kind of like in flux. The same thing. It's like, well, traditionally, all we teach them is write a good resume. We spend
Yeah.
all this time on resume coaching, and it's like, well, resume is great or not. I mean, there's a different lens and skill of evaluating talent now, of bringing people in. And so is that what is going to replace resumes? Was the way she posed the question. And it just, made me really see through the lens of educators as well, who are training this generation to be work ready.
Yeah. It's
It's a
hard.
playbook
It
that is
yeah.
still transition. Um, yeah.
Yeah, but I still stand by, and this is why Real Work Ready exists. That the most powerful interactions and ability to get promoted and ability to make a difference in the workplace are all of the unspoken things that happen when you're in a meeting, the communications with emails, your communication with your peers, and it's not really soft skills, it's those operating behaviors. And I think that regardless, those skills will always be fundamental. It's whether it's a resume that's a video or paper resume. At the end of the day, it's how you operate as a professional in the workplace, and it's just how do you translate that onto your resume, I think, is challenging.
Yeah. Okay. As we wrap up, I think just making this a little bit more actionable for the two
Sure.
sets of people we are communicating to, right?
Yeah.
Let's start with the early career professionals. Is there anything you would like to share? I know you've done a lot of research and work putting together Real Work Ready and leveraging Real Work Ready as a resource for early career professionals. So, as I think about anybody listening that sort of fits that category now, I'm an early career professional. I'm getting into the workforce this season, right, for the first time. Is there
Mhm.
anything they should be doing differently or they should understand differently as they get ready to get to work?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things. Firstly, I offer a bunch of free resources on my LinkedIn and also my Instagram. So definitely check those out. And what's really great is there's so much free information out there at this point, which is great. But what I would say is nothing changes that in person experience that you can have. And even if that's in a digital setting, how are you reaching out to those that can give you some sort of experience or advice? And I know it's harder to get internships now, but reach out and see if there's any free work that you can do for a couple of weeks just to learn, just to grow, just to get that experience. There are so many people out there that are offering to be mentors, and that's including me as well. So I have a bunch of information available on my website that folks can learn from and look to implement themselves. And check out the Real Work Ready program. I'm happy to speak with anyone on it to see if it's a good fit for where they are in their journey. And I know that there's a piece that they can definitely take away from it for sure.
Yeah, I love that. In person live interaction is going to be even more important
I know. Yeah.
with AI. I know even AI, even videos are all AI covered these days. But I think we were just in interesting times. But it's all going to emerge and come together really great. Staying on top of things and getting plugged in with spaces and resources that can support your journey is
Yeah.
going to be important.
Yeah, and then for the businesses side of things, as you look to incorporate the business fundamentals for your early professionals who are struggling, and whether they say it or not, they have a real sense of belonging to your organization. And the biggest way to do that is give them a path that they could retain. They can get up to speed on things that they don't have the time to get up to speed on, like you may have. So being able to offer them that ability, Real Work Ready, my company, is a great place to do that. And I'm happy to meet with any business owners, HR leaders, learning and development to see how Real Work Ready could be incorporated as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I will be dropping the links from Laura in the comment in the chat for anyone. But feel free to reach out to either of us if you'd like to follow up with Laura and learn more about Real Work Already, how you can take part in it yourself as an early career professional, how you can get access to some of those resources, or how you can leverage it for your team or your group. please let us know. But I love that you helped us to understand what's going on with Gen Z. Yeah,
Yeah.
applicable to what the workplace is going through, but also specifically this latest generation in the workplace. Um, that setting that context of what's happening right now and some of the things to consider as we continue to talk about talent, learning and development, recruitment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And professional evaluation in the workplace.
Yeah, amazing. It was so nice to be on with you and to see you again. You're doing such amazing things, and I'm rooting for you. So thank you
Thank you
so
so much.
much.
And thanks for the work you're doing as well and the contributions you're making. I think it's why collaborations and conversations like this are important. There's so many nuances to workplace, work, culture,
Mm-hmm.
development, and I think um, looking at things through the generational lens, through the career growth stage, is going to be very important. So thank you for being here, and I hope you have
Thank
a
you.
good trip back home.
Thank you. Thank you. It was so good to see you again.
Nice to see you too. Bye,
All
everyone.
right.
Thank you for
Bye,
joining.
everyone. Bye.